Hey everybody, welcome for another edition of our In the Lead Off the Record. My name is Kyle Cheslock, for those of you that are joining us for the first time. This is Chase Shields. Together we give you our unsolicited feedback that sometimes...
ruffles feathers?
Yeah, not PG, so that's why we call it Off the Record.
Makes people happy.
Yeah, exactly.
Make people happy.
You know, we can't please everybody.
No.
So, but you know, we try to gear these towards things that'll help you guys in your business. We got a pretty good topic today. We're going to be talking about some strategies for pricing when it comes to e-commerce. But before we dive into that, we love hearing from you guys. If you have any comments, feedback, feel free to chat into us. We do watch it during the episode, so we will try to answer those questions. Otherwise, all of our previous versions of In the Lead Off the Record, we do have them on our other social media channels. Instagram, Twitter, obviously Facebook, for you guys that are on here today. And then, of course, podcasts for those guys that like to listen to their information. We are on iTunes as well as SoundCloud. So that's kind of the spiel for other avenues. Feel free to give us a follow. Like I said, we love hearing from you guys. Without further ado, let's dive in. And we talk a lot about e-commerce, especially lately, with kind of everything that's been going on in the marketplace, and will continue to go on in the marketplace. But I think one of the big things that we want to talk about is it's a different type of sale. Yeah,
and this is something that I've been doing actually in practice since 2007. We've had a lot of discussions with current customers. Spent an hour and a half on the phone with a customer recently, talking through some of the changes in the industries where they're operating. Something that's become apparent to me, at least in my conversations, is that people are not thinking about different pricing strategies depending on how a sale's coming to them.
Yeah.
Which to me was kind of like...
Can you dive into a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Yeah, and I'm about to.
Okay.
So to me, I was really caught off guard by this because when I was trained to sell, we just had different pricing models for different sales channels. So
whether they came in online or through your door.
Yeah, and the other thing too was we would run different sales efforts like Costco.
Mm-hmm.
So we had flat pricing for Costco. We had pricing for one of our websites. We'd have pricing for something that came in off one of our vendors' websites. So and then obviously, if someone walked in the showroom and they were, if you're selling an Audi and they were driving an Audi, we had loyalty pricing.
Yeah.
So I'm really conditioned, and I think we're all really conditioned to different models. And it sounds like in talking to everyone, we just kind of realized that might not be the norm.
No, I think the norm from what we have gathered is you kind of have one model, and that's the customer that comes through your door.
Yeah, and so there's so the great thing is that means that there's a lot of inroads to be made just by evaluating your pricing model, because that's one of the most powerful levers you can pull in your business to make it more profitable. So the first thing is when we talk about e-commerce, going back to a statistic you mentioned a while ago. I think for brick and mortar, and I do want to clarify, the e-commerce I was doing was brick and mortar. So it's independent retail, brick and mortar. We were one of the leaders in e-commerce in the tri-state area. So you mentioned, I think, there's a statistic somewhere, maybe it was Gartner or it was My Total Retail, that it takes to generate $1 million of revenue in a brick and mortar operation, it takes 3 employees.
Mm-hmm.
And for a non-store pure play retailer, it takes 0.9 employees.
Yeah.
Okay, so significantly less labor.
Reduces.
Yeah, so you need almost what?
So whatever you're paying those 2 employees, there's your cost.
Right. So you have to think about, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because the cost of the sale when you're doing e-commerce should be lower, both in theory and in practice. The only way it's not going to be lower in practice is if you're doing something wildly crazy,
if you're just kind of buckshotting these leads that are coming in across, because it's a different type of sale. The most successful ones that we see typically have like a dedicated person or
well, yeah, and
team.
that's a whole other. Yeah, that's absolutely correct. They divvy up the sales staff, and we can talk about that. That's another great topic for another one of these podcasts. So the big thing is that it's a totally different sale. So the cost to an e-commerce sale much lower, unless you're doing something like buying like the wrong Google AdWords, and if you're doing your PPC and you don't know what the hell you're doing, then your costs are out of whack.
Find somebody that does.
Yeah. So otherwise, you're looking at a lower cost of acquisition. So that means that like your pricing model can be different. So you really got to think about this in terms of the fact, like when you sell e-commerce, and whether you're selling a product or a service, or both combined, it's a different sale. And speaking of that, if you do sell products and services, you should have one pricing model for when you sell them both together. You should have a standalone model if you're just selling a product, and you should have a standalone model if you're just selling a service. There's no reason that the pricing should be kind of like all lumped together. Like, you can do that if you want, but what you're going to find is that if you do have to segment or separate those two things, you're going to wind up not having the right markup on one or both.
Well, you might be just selling material and not the service side of it, right?
Right, and it's like
which is common for a lot of e-commerce.
Yeah, I mean it is. You're selling material, so if you are selling material, make sure that you've got the right markup on it, but also account for the fact that you're not having, like, if we're talking about transacting online,
your margin built into your service.
Yeah, so I mean you don't, and you definitely like also if we're talking like pure e-commerce where they're not coming to the store, you are.
There will be some of that.
There's definitely going to be I would argue the entire like DIY across building products is pretty much like that.
Yeah.
They're not having to talk to a salesperson, so you don't have your sales staff's time tied up. So honestly, like your margin is bigger. It should be if you're doing it right.
Less work, right?
Yeah, it's less work. It's less capital intensive.
So the margin might not be 35 or 40%. It might be 20 or 25%. That's you pocketing that.
Yeah, I mean, like technically, yeah. I mean, so you want to look at it if you slap if you're talking gross margin, yes. If you're talking like X, your cost to get the sale. That may be a little bit different.
Depending on the operation.
Right. So, I mean, you don't need to mark up as much, I think, is Kyle's point, if you're doing pure e-commerce. So, keep that in mind.
You got to know your numbers.
Right, and because the point is that your dollar profit, at the bottom line might be higher with e-commerce than it is with something in your store, because you're not tying up. You don't have your employees' time tied up. So, like, really... Which
is the cost center for most operations is your payroll.
The people and your overhead for having a big fancy showroom and whatever, and it's like... That's the other thing that always blows my mind is the desire to open all these showrooms when, like Gary Vaynerchuk says, why open 2,000 locations? I can do just as much business from one. Yep. That's why he turned a single location alcohol retailer... liquor store into $60 million from $3 million with the one location just doing the e-commerce. So definitely
so you don't have to expand horizontally to grow vertically.
No, you don't. And so I would definitely like keep in mind, so the first thing we really want to establish here when we're looking at e-commerce pricing is this is a different sale. So it has different costs associated with it. And if you're doing this right, your costs should be dramatically lower than your brick and mortar, like freestanding store costs.
But your people also need to understand that this is a different sale. You can't handle it the same.
Yeah, it's a totally different sale, and it's a different revenue channel. I think that's like, that's a great. We should do that for another one. We'll talk about setting up your staff. I know we're working on a white paper on that.
Because if your staff, comes in and they try to handle it the same as your traditional sale, it's going to be rough sailing.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
And that's where your cost centers will rise.
Yeah, that's exactly where it's going to rise. So the first thing is like when you're looking at everything, like you have to be able to step back and be like, this is a totally different sale, and you need to actually like look at the numbers and figure out what your cost to transact online is versus what your cost to transact in your store is. So that's number one. Number two, and this is kind of like in line with pricing philosophy, but this came up in a conversation. Someone was telling me, well, we don't want to publish our prices online. Well, guess what? Like, it's not 1960. Consumers expect transparency, and this goes back to kind of like what Kyle was saying. It's a different sale, so you're getting a savvier consumer 9 times out of 10.
Well, today's consumer in general is savvier than what it was yesterday.
And the other thing is, I would almost argue that, well, and I know from experience, from my own experience, not putting prices online will actually decrease your lead volume. It will decrease your showroom traffic. Because remember, e-commerce is another great channel of lead generation for you.
And that's a good point. And we talk about this too, but just think about how you shop too. Because at the end of the day, we're all consumers. So think about when you want to buy a shirt.
Yeah, this is another thing where people don't think like, well, when I buy, I want to see the price. They're like, well, I'm selling, so I'm not going to show the price.
Literally anything from a car to a T-shirt to whatever it is, you want to know what the price is beforehand to see if it's worth your time driving into the store, or if even they have it in stock.
Well, and so exactly, and that's the other thing that I think people don't realize when it comes to local brick and mortar e-commerce is this is much more a source of driving consumers to your and customers to your store by having it online, because these $1,000, $2,000 and up purchases are not like snap purchases. No. So I think research that one of our marketing partners did shows that it takes like for like flooring, for instance, it takes like 149 days to make a purchase. Mm-hmm. So what's going to happen is people are actually going to come to your store to see the product. They might look at the price, but if they're not ready to buy, it doesn't matter. What they're doing is they're coming in and doing their research, and on average they visit 3 different locations. So we know they're doing research. So this idea that, oh my God, I can't have my prices online because someone's going to go somewhere else is like basically totally debunked.
Yeah.
Because people are doing this research, they're going to what you want to do is show them that you have it, so you're one of the 3 places they go.
Yeah, and I think one of the common things about not listing on there is A, you've never done it before, but B, you may lose the sale because of the price of somebody cheaper. That's not always the case. They're just looking to gather information.
Right. And
you may lose the sale if you don't list it, and you're going to go to a Home Depot, a Lowe's at that.
In today's world, and I can tell you this from experience, I don't need a research to back this up because I've done it in practice. I can tell you that if you don't list the price, you will lose sales. You will get significantly less sales. You will get less traffic. Just if I did it, I don't need anyone to tell me.
And I'm sure it doesn't matter if you've been in business for a year or 30 years.
No, it doesn't make a difference at all, because like you're obscuring information, like you're hiding information. It's like we were doing some research, and we saw the other day when you and I were sitting in my office, and we were looking at some e-commerce operations, brick and mortar that were doing e-commerce. And what was interesting was all of the brick and mortar e-commerce operations hide their prices. Mm-hmm. And
we looked at like 5 or 6. First 5 or 6.
We looked at 5, and 4 of the 5 did not allow you to actually buy online.
And it was like the first 5 that was.
And let me tell you something else. Like, don't even bother with e-commerce if you're going to do this like 1980s car salesman bullshit. Like, it's just not even worth the time.
It doesn't work. It does not work with today's consumer.
It doesn't work at all, because here's the other problem. People are going to come to your showroom, and then they're going to buy on your site. So if they like can't buy on your site after they leave your showroom, that is research backed, that is the way a lot of people like to buy, then you're losing the sale anyway, because you're not allowing them to transact because you're too silly to show the fucking price.
Yeah.
Like,
or even allow them to buy online, pick up in store.
Yeah, that's like legit one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. And in 12 months, it's not even going to be a conversation, because everyone's going to be doing it, and the people who aren't are going to be like dying. They're going to be on their way out. So
it's going to be a slaughter.
Yeah, and that's like, I don't see that going longer than 24 months. Not that I'm the oracle, but like the rate of change is it's just increasing.
Well, it changes faster than any of us can even keep up. Like, it's just, that's what today's life is like in business. Change is happening at such a rapid pace. It's difficult to keep up as is, but if you just neglect not to try.
Yeah, and if you're worried about price shopping, so you don't want to share your prices, you're getting shopped anyway. You're literally just lying to yourself. So
and let's be honest, you're not going to want the guy that's coming in there just trying to get the lowest price.
Right, and well, you might. I mean, if that's your model, but you probably don't. If you're an independent retailer, you probably don't. So, two things that we've established. Number one, e-commerce is a totally different sale. Number two, you need to be transparent with when you're conducting e-commerce with your prices. You gotta have your prices online. Like, just deal with it. If you don't want to deal with it, don't do it. Don't bitch when you don't win. So, third thing, do not be afraid to run online only pricing. And going back to number one, and everyone does it. Like, it can literally be, a cent a piece, a cent a foot, whatever.
You can afford to do it. Again, coming back to our original point, it doesn't cost as much to acquire that customer.
Well, and the other thing too is, like, when you're talking about brick and mortar retail, like we had online prices for our cars or whatever. And really, like, the online price is surprise, no different than what the on the floor price is. Like, again, think outside of the box. Like, this is not really like this isn't a black box.
Yeah,
this
it's not
is
complicated.
So
this isn't written in stone.
You could buy our cars and parts and everything on eBay. You could buy them on our website. Like, but what would happen is most people would see stuff on the website, they'd see the price, then they'd call and negotiate. So if you get someone who's going to, like, call based off of seeing your inventory and your price or your product catalog and your pricing on your website, you're going to negotiate with them anyway. So, like, my advice is leave the price, close to what your list is, and then negotiate it. The other thing too is, don't be afraid to use e-commerce as a channel to move, like, inventory that you don't want. We had a cats and dogs list at the lumberyard of just, like, we would pull when we would whiff sort for millwork and rip orders and stuff like that. We would throw that arrow crap in a unit, and then eventually, 6 months, we're sitting on like 3 units of like 5-inch wide red oak. What are we gonna do with that? So use it to run specials, and then I also wouldn't be afraid.
Yeah, if you're overstocked in your inventory.
And look, like, if you have inventory on the ground, that costs you money. So I don't know
every day that it sits there.
Why you would really care if someone's, like, buying out of your inventory that's sitting there costing you money anyway.
Yeah, and you might be able to reduce your inventory doing this e-commerce as well.
Well, theoretically, I mean, if you're not turning your inventory, everyone I'm talking to, for the most part, in these commoditized sectors, is turning their inventory 10, 12 times a year.
Yeah, once a month.
So, yeah, exactly. That's across the board. I was on site with a top 100 pro sales yard. They're doing about that. I talked to a top 50 flooring dealer the other day. They're doing about that. So, don't be afraid to run online specials, I guess is my point. If you want to move material and you want to move it, like, quickly and have the smoothest, easiest transaction, remember, your hard costs for an e-commerce operation are your web hosting costs, your advertising costs digitally, and then that's it. So, and I don't want to hear anyone be like, well, credit cards, well, everyone else has figured out how to price credit cards in. So, we have, like, everyone has.
$30 a month?
Yeah, so anyway, your costs are a lot lower. So if you're looking to just move material, e-commerce is a great way to do it. We talked about Amazon Home Services. Again, like, if you're installing and you are in a position where you have crews or you're an installer, obviously if you're an installer, you're in business to make money.
Yeah.
So I would be very interested to see what Amazon's pricing model is for, or what people are charging for stuff like that, because they're saving so much on the material.
Well, the nice thing about this too is, for these guys too, you want to talk about additional revenue streams. One of the common things I know, at least in the flooring industry, from the people that we talk to for these installers, is they're booked up. They're hard to find, can't find enough people, yada yada yada. So if that's fine. You're selling material anyway on these sites.
That's
you may
the other
not get
thing.
The service, but you're creating an additional revenue stream for yourself.
Yeah, this is all, like, so when you're selling material, that's a great point online. You literally just price in your costs just like you would anything else. Realizing that the costs are generally lower, and even if you're selling on a channel, if you're selling product on a channel like Amazon, the other thing too is if you're carrying a lot of inventory, yeah, I guess you can sell out of your inventory, but like what most savvy retailers are going to do is they're going to have their vendors drop ship.
Yeah.
For those of you who are not familiar with drop shipping, it means the manufacturer will ship the product direct. So
it's literally the only cost you have is going to be your web hosting and any kind of advertising you do. That's it.
Yeah, and they're going to charge you for the drop shipping, but you price it into the product. So it's like, it's not like, again, this is all just
very doable.
It's all moving numbers around.
Yeah.
It's like when someone would come in to buy a car, or someone wanted millwork and rough lumber, they would want to pay X for the lumber and X for the millwork. So if we needed to mark up the millwork and mark down the lumber, fine. If we need to mark up the lumber and mark down the millwork, fine. It's like people want, a lot for their trade, the sell price of the car goes up. They want a cheap price on the car, the price for the trade goes down. You got to make your money somewhere. Yeah. So like this is all really just moving numbers around. And realizing that like with e-commerce, you have a lot of flexibility because your overhead is not in a building. It is not in necessarily a sales staff. Most savvy e-commerce operations can probably really run their leads through like one person. If you're bigger, if you've got 10, 20 locations, okay, you look at setting up a dedicated e-commerce team.
Yeah, start with one, and if you see yourself doing more than $1 million in sales with that guy, and he's strapped, then do it.
Well, yeah, and I would really, my metric on that would really be lead volume more than anything, because if you get a ton of lead volume, that's where you get tied up, because you need that.
That's true.
You need that person. Yeah, that's like, because I could not have done 400 leads a month. Like George and I could do 400 leads a month together. And so to put that in context, my partner and I were doing 400 leads a month, all e-commerce, 4 franchised automotive dealerships.
So 200 each. I mean, you got to figure out what the capacity is for that person.
Right, and they should be able to make somewhere between 30 and 60 calls a day. They should be able to send at least 100 emails. I mean, I was hitting 30 calls on days where I was doing like 2 test drives, and I was at 2 different stores that were 20 minutes apart. So you could be on the phone while you're in the car. Anyway, I would say that for the MultiStore, you look at setting it up, set the team up in accordance with your lead volume. You'll figure out kind of where they need to be. Definitely have designated salespeople for this, and we'll do a whole episode. I know we're bumping up on a half hour here, but yeah, it's kind of like for pricing, you can think it through and have like online only pricing. Theoretically, it's going to cost you less. Theoretically, you don't even have to mark it down. You just show the price. Whatever you do, show the price. If you want to label it online special, fine. If you want to have an online special, fine. Like, not a big deal. Very good way to go about it. I would say that if I'm you see a lot of manufacturers doing like online coupons. If I'm a brick and mortar retailer, like I'm knocking down my pricing by a percentage for online. Knock 5% off or whatever for doing it online. Because again, like you're getting your money, you're getting paid. Those transactions are credit card transactions. Like so you get your money. And they're really easy for the consumer, more importantly. So realize that it's a different sale. It's not someone walking in. They're not always buying like everything you're selling in terms of a product and a service. Have a strategy for when they buy both. Have a strategy for when they buy one or the other. And then again, just don't be afraid to call, like have some online special tier. It doesn't matter. Like there's no... it doesn't have to be 20% off online. It can be freaking 1% off. Doesn't really matter. But definitely, at this point in time, you have to be transparent. Consumers expect it. You expect it when you buy, to your point. Yeah. More importantly, everyone who's going to see this, they want to see the price before they buy. Why would you, going back to something we talked about a long time ago, would you buy from yourself? Like, because if you're telling me that you want to see the price online, and then you turn around when you're selling and you won't show the price online, like your actions don't map to your words. There's like a disconnect there. So Make sure that you're transparent, think it through, realize that if you do this right, it's an awesome channel of revenue. You can't lose your ass on it like you can opening up a new store.
Plus, you don't need the additional capital to open up that store.
No.
This is an easy open, and it's almost instant profit in your pocket.
Just and the one thing I would say too, from a strategic standpoint, is I would build everything that you can into the price of the good.
Yeah.
And I would or service, and I would show like an all-in price. Most of the time, when people look online and they're doing e-commerce, they get really pissed off if there are like hidden fees.
Yeah.
So think that through too, because you don't want to get to like the checkout and then like that's where you show your itemized list.
20%.
Price as much if you can in. I would say if you can do free shipping if you're selling not locally where you deliver. Do free shipping, price it in, work something out with a vendor who drop ships, figure out kind of like a flat rate. Yeah. They're already doing this, so we know they're already doing it because we know they're selling on Wayfair, we know they're selling on Amazon.
Just gotta make the phone call.
And that's I mean Wayfair does not do. I do not think it does its own distribution like Amazon does, and even Amazon will have vendors drop ship most of the products. They only hold products in stock at their warehouses, forward positioned when they're super popular.
Yeah.
So again, drop shipping, great way to save a buck, save your customers a buck. But really, just go into it open-minded. It's not your traditional sale. When you do the costs, you'll see that. Try to come up. I would advise you have some sort of incentive to say it's an online thing so that people pick up the phone, be transparent about the pricing, show it online, and go all in.
Yep. And that, guys, is going to wrap it up for us today. Great feedback right there. Put a plan in place. Any comments? Like I said, we love hearing from you guys. If you have any questions, need help, feel free to DM us. We'll help you out as much as we absolutely can. We love doing that type of stuff. Otherwise, this will be up on iTunes as well as SoundCloud after this and be pushed out via the other channels. If you guys have anybody you feel like would benefit from this, feel free to tell them about this. We do it every Wednesday at 3 o'clock. Otherwise, that's it for us today.
Yeah, we don't ask for anything but a like or a share.
Yeah, that's it. Pretty basic.
And maybe next week we'll go over setting up your sales operation.
Yeah, absolutely.
How to staff for e-commerce.
Yep, for sure, guys. So until then, hopefully you guys have a great week, and we'll talk to you next week.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good one.